I'm here at the ARC conference, and I'm interviewing Joe Bastone. And Joe, why don't you tell us about yourself and the role you play at Honeywell?
All right, thank you, Richard. So my name is Joe Bastone. I am Director of Product Management for all of Experian. And here at the ARC Forum, we're introducing Experian PKS IT Hive. Experian PKS IT Hive is a new technology that allows us to be much more flexible in how we deploy automation systems. Customers can choose either to deploy their automation system completely within a central control room, within a data center, or a combination of both. By being able to do this, they're much more flexible with how they can actually deploy their systems and, by extension, how they will administer their process automation systems.
Well, that's great, Joe. The website that I run is called Houston Energy Industry News, and we're in Houston, and Houston is about energy. So what kind of new stuff do you have for us as regards energy?
So from an energy standpoint, we really focus on Experian PKS Hive in general. We first announced Experian PKS Hive in June of last year at the Honeywell Users Group. Experian PKS Hive is made up of three major components. There's the IO Hive, there's the Control Hive, and then there's the IT Hive that we're launching here at the ARC Forum. The IO Hive allows us to really distribute IO closer to modular equipment and use that in a much more flexible fashion. Control Hive allows us to decouple the control strategy from the controller itself, allowing for much more flexible allocation of controller resources, and allows us to balance out overutilized assets with underutilized assets, making a much more cleaner solution in terms of how we deploy those controllers out in the field.
Yeah, I think when I was doing process engineering in the plants, they would have a, 9-loop controller or something like that, and it seemed like none of the processes had anything to do with each other. And I guess with the Hive, you can decouple these controllers so they can start to focus in on a more particular unit of the facility.
Right. If you take a look at other controllers, especially in systems that were installed 30 years ago, you'd have one process manager controller that would control several hundred loops of the process. And when it was installed, it might be fairly pristine. It might control a certain piece of equipment like a boiler. Now over time, that spare capacity that was on that particular controller would be utilized for other parts of the process. Perhaps another boiler, perhaps a compressor, perhaps a chiller. And over time, you would end up with process managers or HPMs or C300 controllers in the Experian example that are controlling a lot of different parts of the process. So over time, you had a very convoluted solution that was difficult to maintain in the long term. Now, Experian PKS Hive allows us to realign the control strategies with the proper ideal controller. So instead of one C300 controller controlling perhaps 4 different boilers, you instead have one C300 that's focused on a given piece of equipment. It's a much more well-aligned control strategy that's easier to maintain in the long term.
I have to agree. Sounds like a great idea. Joe, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Richard.
All righty. Let me